What is up, my BA family? Today we are going to be talking about the Garcia Revo Premier Gen 5. Now, this reel just came out this last year in 2024 and was presented at ICAST. And, there is not a lot of information on this new Gen 5. But it is definitely a reel that I was very interested in when it first came out, because I was kind of curious how this was different from the STX. And while there are some subtle differences, there is also some major differences. And we're gonna see today if it's worth that price bump from the $250 price range of the STX up to the $300 price range for the Revo Premier. Now first, let's talk about some differences between the STX and the Revo Premier. So first thing that you're gonna probably notice is on the STX, you have this aluminum cranking handle. And then on the Premier, you have a carbon fiber cranking handle. Now, that is actually not the feature that I really was interested about. In fact, I don't really care for the carbon fiber cranking handles, as I understand that it does reduce a little bit of the weight, but it just seems to me like, especially for the type of fishing I do down here in Florida, I want as sturdy of a handle as possible. And while Garcia makes really sturdy carbon fiber handles, it's just something that, personal preference, I've never had a problem with aluminum, so I just stick with aluminum. So that is not the feature that really drew me to trying out the new Premier. Now, they both come in a 6:7-to-1 and then 8:1-to-1 ratio. No difference there. They both do not come in a 7:3-to-1. Typically with Garcia, there's three things that you get when you step up in price, or a combination of the three. The first one being is the reel tends to be a little bit lighter. And that is very apparent when you step up from the Revo into the Xenon series. The other thing is the max speed of the gear ratio. As you guys know, the STX or the SX Rocket has a 9:3-to-1 gear ratio, while the actual Revo Rocket has over a 10:1-to-1 gear ratio. I just never really saw the point of ever going over 8:1-to-1. Maybe the SX, the 9:3-to-1 for frogging or topwater, but for the most part, I keep it 8:1-to-1 and slower, and I actually prefer more towards the slower side because I typically do more moving baits. And the 8:1-to-1s I really only use for techniques that I use the rod to create action, like dragging a worm, dragging a jig, Carolina rig, that kind of stuff. Something that I need to pick up line quick. But the feature that actually drew me to trying out the Premier to see if it was actually worth it. The last thing that you typically get with Garcia when you go up in price is a lighter spool. Now, how does that help you? Typically, with a lighter spool, it takes less inertia to move that spool, meaning you can cast lighter baits further. An added benefit that most people don't talk about lighter spools as well is because it is a lighter spool, especially in the terms of centrifugal brakes, it is easier to control that spool with your brakes and making your brakes far more effective to get that longer casting distance at the end of your cast. That is why I wanted to try out this Premier to see if it was worth that $50 price bump. Now, I already spooled all of my reels up with 17-pound Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon trailing. And I don't know the exact weight difference, but you could tell that the Premier is much more skeletonized than the STX. Now, I've never really seen or had any issues with my STXs. Once again, for a $250 reel, it's a pretty all-in-one package that gets the job done beautifully. But there are some applications that I feel a lighter spool would come more in handy. And that would be like skipping docks or, you know, weightless soft plastics. And today we are going to find out if the spool difference between these two reels, because really that is the only major difference that would make you want to spend $50 more. Because both have 10+1 bearings, both have the aircraft aluminum frame, both have the same braking system. So there's really no other reason to go to the Premier other than the ability to cast lighter baits. So we are going to put these reels head to head in different scenarios today to see if it's actually worth spending that extra $50 for the Premier. All right, guys, so we are going to start with the Premier. And let me start off by saying the first thing I actually do not like about this reel, and you know, this is a personal preference thing, and I'll actually compare it to the STX. All right, and it's going to be the first noticeable difference when you get these reels if you have an SX, and that is going to be the actual shape of the crank handle. As you can see, this is just a straight piece of carbon, or a straight piece of carbon fiber. It does have several layers. It is very sturdy with very little flex. However, when you look at the STX, you notice that there is some contour to that cranking handle that allows it to be just a little bit more compact and stick to the reel a little bit closer. You also notice that when it comes to the actual distance of the cranking handle, this gives you a little bit more of a wider, which allows you to get a little bit better cranking power. However, I would have liked to see that they actually shaped the they actually shaped the carbon to the same profile as the STX. It just makes it a little bit more comfortable for me when it comes to actually reeling the reel, and you know, it also is a lot more aesthetically pleasing. This kind of just seems odd for a $300 reel, and that would be the first thing I do not like about the new Premier. Now, the first bait we're going to be testing today is, as I said, we're going to be testing this on Castability and all that kind of stuff. So we have a 3/8 ounce finesse jig right here with a little Grub Boss from Berkeley. This is the 4-inch Grub Boss from Berkeley, and I actually just trimmed it down so it fits on the finesse jig. But we're talking a very lightweight, especially for 17-pound line. I mean, normally I would throw a bait like this on 15-pound line, but you know, as I said, today we want to test the castability, and I believe 17-pound line, at least for a medium heavy, is pretty standard. Most people would use that setup, and if this reel is truly good at casting light baits better, you know, then the 17-pound line should not be an issue for it, especially considering a lot of people cast 3/8 ounce chatter baits. So it really shouldn't, it should perform beautifully in this scenario, as this is a common setup, and this is a 7-1 medium heavy fast action rod. So a little shorter. This is my dock skipping rod. It's actually the Garcia Pro Series Shane LaHue dock skipping rod. It is one of their higher end rods compared to the Versatility series that I typically use. But I mean, this is not a cheap rod. It's a $200 rod. So really, we cannot blame the rod for any of the issues that we have. And I actually already got the brakes all set up. We're sitting probably about 2/3 of the way up on the centrifugal brakes, And as you guys can see, the spool is pretty loose, which is kind of like how I like it. I typically use my finger. Ignore the glove, guys. I'll explain that in a little bit. So we had a little bit of overspool, but I mean, we casted pretty far with that. That wasn't bad at all. Like I said, that is the main reason why I wanted to try this reel out, is to see if there was a reason to pay that extra 50 bucks. And of course we cast straight into some grass and get stuck. There we go. But as for the weight compared to the STX, it's not really noticeable, I will say. And like I said, that cranking handle is not as comfortable as the one on the STX. Like I said, I feel they should have shaped this to the same contours as they do all their other reels. I feel like, you know, with that $300 range, that just seems tacky to me. And it's not to say anything against Abu Garcia. I love Abu Garcia reels, especially the Revo line. I think they're great reels, and you know, they kind of fit every price bracket, you know, which is amazing. You know, like you can kind of get what you want. You know, we are getting really good casting distance with such a light line, or such a light lure, and a heavier line. So I mean, definitely, you know, it's doing its job. Like I will say, the castability is great. You know, I do need to do a better job fine-tuning my brakes a little bit, but there we go. Not as much casting distance, but we didn't get any overspool on that, so we'll back off each one because we came up 2. Beautiful. So it's probably about, I would say 150 feet between me and that grass. And we pretty much just landed on the outside of that grass without really trying at all. And we are stuck up on more grass. Anyways, so that is the castability, I guess you could say, of this light lure on 17-pound line 7-1. Now we are going to switch out to the STX on this setup to see if it gets the same. Because like I said, if it gets the same castability, is it really worth stepping up another $50 for a reel like this? I'll be right back with you guys. All right, guys. So now we are back with the Abu Garcia STX. Once again, the Premier comes in at $300. The STX comes in at the $250 mark. Now, as I said before, the STX has been a great reel for me. I absolutely love this reel. It does really well. Like I have no issues with it. Typically, it's probably the highest end reel I would buy on a normal, except for certain techniques. For the most part, the STX is what I use for like my speed worms, where I have a 1/4 ounce, you know, a 1/4 ounce weight on a heavy 7.6. You know, as you guys can see, there's an STX 8-1-1. And like I said, I'm dragging a worm with a very light light, and that's actually 20-pound line on a 7.6 heavy, and it casts a mile. You know, like I said, typically I have had no issues with my STXs about castability, durability. Like I said, it's just a great reel. All right, so we had a little bit of overspool, so we're going to tighten up that spool tension knob just a little bit. See, because it seemed like it was more on the front end of it, which, like I said, when it comes to moving that spool, that lighter spool has less inertia. It takes less force to move it, so you don't have that sudden jerk motion that causes that overspool in the beginning. There we go. All right, that's a little bit better cast. A little less overspool. Let's see if we loosen those brakes up a little bit, what happens. All right. So really good cast there, very even. And we only missed the other one by a foot. I could probably tune it in just a smidgen more and see if we can't get that last foot that we did once we got that Premier tuned in. Now granted, it is taking a little bit more intent, I guess you could say. That's about the same. So I did have to cast a little harder to get that same all the way up to that same area. So I will say that the Premier does cast a little bit better, at least in this application. Now we are going to do it with even lighter baits on a different rod, but in this application, when it comes to this light jig, you know, finesse jig, you know, 3/8, like I said, they're pretty much equal, but this is not lightweight. When you talk about lightweight, 3/8 of an ounce is not light. That is pretty standard for most techniques that people do, like whether it's flipping and pitching, you know, an open cover. 3/8 ounce, not lightweight. As I said before, we are going to try and move this more to a weightless setup and see how that works. So typically my current setup for weightless is going to be this right here. This is a Veritas medium heavy, or I'm sorry, Veritas medium 7-foot back section rod. We got a 4/0 hook on there, 5-inch fluke, you know, absolute staple here in Florida. We're actually going to start with the STX, but we're going to head back out in here, you know, where fishing the fluke actually makes sense. And we're going to try the Castability out. Right now, I have a feeling this is going to be kind of either good or bad. I don't know. Okay, so pretty fair Castability. I'm actually quite impressed with that for just not really dialing it in much and only having a little bit of overspool. That's not bad. Not bad at all. Now, when you talk about fishing with such light baits, sometimes it's kind of hard to know if you loosen the spool, tighten the brakes, loosen the brakes. It's like it's a balancing act. It seems like even on the second try, we got that dialed in pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Cool. Even a short cast, no overspool. That typically is the problem with the heavier one, is it takes those long casts to kind of work out, you know, that overspin. So not bad. And we just kind of want to work this area before we move back in there. You know, see if anything's lurking, you know. Tell you what, like, it is so hard not to throw a frog right now. I tell you what, so hard not to throw a frog right now. Yeah, so I mean, obviously guys, the STX is doing pretty good. I really don't have any complaints on it. This is definitely one of the techniques that benefits from a lighter spool, you know, because like I said, like it just doesn't take that much inertia to really you know, get that bait moving or get that spool moving. So you don't have that initial jerk action, I guess you could say. And you know, there's actually quite a bit of control when it comes to you know, working this bait with this reel. All right guys, so now let's go ahead and throw on the Premier, because like I said, we know the STX can handle a fish. Let's be honest, the STX is proven time and time again that it is an absolute workhorse. So, oh, okay, so now we're going to start popping now that I'm doing a little bait change. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and swap this for the Premier. Tell you what, guys, it is so hard to work with this line with a freaking glove on your thumb. I guess while we have a second, I'll tell you guys kind of why I have to wear a glove right now. And a lot of you probably already could guess, you know, if you are, you know, avid bass fishermen. So for the last 2 years, I typically do not wear gloves. I go fishing quite often, and you know, I occasionally catch a fish or two that I tend to lip, and that has turned into bass thumb. Now, most of y'all are like, oh well, you're a wimp, because you know, bass thumb's not that bad. And yes, I would typically agree with you. We'll have to work out that backlash here in a second. Typically, I would agree with you. However, I have gotten so much bass thumb that I have literally taken off my complete fingerprint and have, you know, wore it so raw that just touching these EVA foam grips, like the skin is so fragile that causes me to bleed. Like I have rubbed it that thin, guys. So you know, I have to give it time to heal. And rather than let's be honest, your boy is not quitting fishing, you know, for any short or extended period of time. So this was the solution that I came up with for the time being until my thumb heals up a little bit. So that is why I am wearing a glove on my thumb. You know, like this is just a latex glove that I have cut to wear under my, you know, AFCO sun gloves. You know, protect myself from some sunburn. I've been getting pretty sunburned out here lately, especially today. It's supposed to get up to 90. It's supposed to be sunny all day, so I just want a little extra protection. Anyways, that's what happened to my thumb. So yeah. All right, so now that we got that, and I know some of y'all probably just saw that knot I tied and was just like, yeah, that's a little overkill. But I don't like losing my musted hooks. I like musted hooks, and you know, I don't like losing equipment. So double piston knot, you know, it's getting buried anyway. See, just like that, you know. So I don't mind it too much. You know, it takes a little second extra to tie, but I mean, come on, who really gives a crap? All right, so tension knob's pretty good. Let's just cast this and see where we got. Okay, so definitely some overspool. So we'll tighten that up a little bit. But I mean, that didn't take much effort to get it way over there. This might be the solution, guys. And like I said, that's what I was interested in this reel for, is I wanted to see if that light, the EXD, I believe is what it's called, I'll put it down here on the screen, casting system that they came out with a long time ago. It's actually been out for a while, and utilized in their higher end reels. But I wanted to see if it would be that much better for techniques like this, where, you know, you have no weight. And like I said, this is 17-pound line, you know, with a weightless fluke. And I mean, we're casting far, guys. I would even say that it performs better the lighter the weight of the bait. And you know, I don't know, I think this might be where this reel stays. All right, guys, so as I said before, the Premier is definitely a dope reel. Like, for your lighter baits, absolutely 100% it is worth the money if you have it to spend. As I said before, my budget is typically around $300 for a combo, and blowing all that budget on just the reel is just not realistic for me. So as I said before, this is probably the only Premier I will ever own. But if you can afford it, it definitely gives you that longer cast than your STX or SX reels. Like, I definitely understand why they put it in the lineup and why it's at that $300 price point. But as I said before, there's a couple things I did not like. The main thing being that cranking shaft handle or that cranking handle shaft, you know, being just a straight piece of carbon fiber, it's just not aesthetically pleasing, and it's not as comfortable. I would say that, you know, if they could contour that to how they do their aluminum crank shafts, I would say that would be a great aesthetically pleasing reel, and I would see that 300 price point better. I still see the 300 price point, but just that kind of just looks tacky to me. And when I'm spending $300 on a reel, I want it to work great and I want it to look great. And like I said, that straight carbon fiber crank, it's just not doing it for me. But with that being my main negative, other than it's a little pricey, yo, I mean, that's not bad, yo. So, but I'm gonna leave a link down to all of our affiliates down in the description if you guys want to pick up gear from Abu Garcia, Berkeley, Wiley X sunglasses. Also, we are now affiliated with AFCO, and then of course our sponsor, Crush It Gel. If you guys want to pick up some Crush It Gel, their link will be down in the description, as well as our promo code BraveAngler10 to get yourself 10% off Crush It Gel. Absolutely awesome. Stock up now as the season is, you know, in full swing, because this bass crack has been absolutely killing it in Florida, as well as the shad crack. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys like this kind of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. Now go catch a fish. Yeah.